Big trade in Anaheim as the Ducks acquire Cutter Gauthier, and I have a special guest to talk all about that trade on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jason JD Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for well over a decade, also the public address voice for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. And today's episode, my fine feathered friends, is brought to you tonight by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I am joined today by the one and only, and I always pronounce this wrong, so I'll let you introduce yourself. Because
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Hadi Kalakeche. I'm the host of Exactly. I'm the host of Locked On NHL Prospects along with Sebastian Hai, who couldn't be here today. But yeah, I'm excited to talk some Cutter Gauthier and Anaheim Ducks overall. You guys have a great prospect pool.
We'll be very good in 2 years.
Yeah.
I promise. But as I've told the Ducks fans since October, have patience. Have lots of patience. But let's get into the big news, because this came out of nowhere somewhat. Because, I mean, I didn't see it coming as far as Anaheim side. Philly side, we did see this coming. So let's get into it. The trade itself. The Anaheim Ducks acquired Cutter Gauthier, the top prospect from the Philadelphia Flyers, in exchange for Jamie Drysdale and a 2025 second round pick. So first, let's talk about the trade itself. This came out of nowhere, but it also didn't. So can you talk about that for a hot second?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cutter Gauthier on draft day, according to reports, told Daniel Briere that he wanted to be a Flyer. And a couple months later, he wasn't really taking calls. He wasn't really interested in signing, not really showing much interest in being in Philadelphia. So immediately, Briere got on the phone and started kind of shopping him around, seeing where he can get him a fit. At the 2023 NHL draft table, during draft day one, he had a deal set up with the Montreal Canadiens for the 5th overall pick of the 2023 NHL draft. They wanted David Reinbacher, and Kent Hughes said no. So that trade went to sea. And then now we're here. But this has been a long time coming on Philly's side. They've been trying to find a good fit for Cutter Gauthier so they don't just lose him after his NCAA tenure. They want him to play in a market. They wanted to get something back for him. And I think that this works out for both teams. But yeah, I was really surprised that this happened today. I was expecting either trade deadline or at the 2024 draft table, something like that. But we got it on a random day in January. So I guess everyone's happy, right?
I mean, this is a win-win as far as I'm concerned, because this fits Philadelphia. And I actually just got done watching the Flyers Penguins game as we're recording this.
Yep.
And I could see where Jamie Drysdale would fill some kind of role. I could see him possibly maybe first line. I know Flyers fans would want to see him on a first line, but I could see him probably second line at the moment. But I know we could talk about that a little bit later, because, you know, where will Jamie Drysdale play? Why Jamie Drysdale? We'll talk about that in a second. But I want to talk about the Cutter Gauthier. Actually, it's still weird. I'm still processing this, by the way, as everyone here is, by the way.
Oh my, yeah. But yeah, it's a strange situation, I'd say. Like I said, I didn't expect this to happen today. And the Flyers of all teams, the Ducks of all teams, I mean, you guys have a lot of really, really good prospects. But looking at the fit and the need on Philly's side, they were looking for a prospect defenseman back in some way, shape, or form. And Jamie Drysdale kind of fits that bill, obviously. But overall, I mean, Cutter Gauthier has a quality to him that really fits within what the Anaheim Ducks are trying to build. You know, you've already got your Trevor Zegras, your Mason McTavish. Leo Carlson is looking really, really good and should end up
even
being
though he's been hurt.
Yeah, in the games that he's played, and I really like what the Ducks have done with Carlson. You rarely see this. He's either not playing or playing 18 to 20 minutes a night, which fits a lot with what an SHL schedule would look like over in Sweden in the pro leagues. They don't play as many games as the NHL. They play 30, 40 games something in that range. So this is kind of emulating what Carlson would be playing at the SHL level as a top six forward, right? Having 5-6 days rest between games, playing about 30 to 40 games in the season. I found that really, really interesting in terms of what Anaheim's doing with him. And again, I've never seen this before the prospects. So in terms of how Anaheim manages their prospects, full trust in them.
I agree with that. I mean, I agree for the most part with most of their prospects, with one or two exceptions.
Yeah.
And I think talking about Leo Carlson, the way they brought him up has been somewhat frustrating for Ducks fans because there are certain games where you thought he would have fit better in who they're playing or who they're playing against.
Yeah.
And in the games he's played, I think he's been solid. I mean, already Coach Greg Cronin has already put trust in Leo Carlson by putting him at times on the top power play unit, by the way. You don't see that too often from an 18, 19-year-old, much less a 20-year-old. And he's been flourishing in his role in Anaheim, playing with guys like Zegras. When you saw Carlson and Zegras on the same line, they worked their magic pretty well. And even with all the injuries they've had, you've had Carlson kind of move around once Z was out, once Terry was out. And I feel like Carlson has developed into just put me anywhere, put me at center, put me at wing. He's thrived in each position for being so young, by the way.
Yeah, and I can get into kind of what makes him so good. I mean, he's a supreme playmaker. His understanding of the game is high end. He manages left-right plays extremely well. He's really good at taking pucks off the board into the middle. These are qualities that usually come with a lot of time. Carlson plays an extremely mature game for a player his age. But like I said, I think it's really about patience and slowly but surely ramping up the level. I mean, the volume and quality of the games that he's going to be playing. Because, I think what they're really trying to do here is emulate what he would, be doing in the SHL, which is playing a game a week, a game, maximum 2 with a good 5-6 days of rest. I don't think it's much to do with the level of competition. I think it's really just about giving him a slow ramp up in play because he's been playing 30 to 40 games a season for the past 2-3 years. It's something his body's gotten used to. And if you try to play him more, it can lead to injuries. So I think, the injury he got, I don't have much details on that. But it's something you usually avoid by keeping a player like that in a structure that he's comfortable with. And if a player's playing 30 to 40 games a season, play him 30 to 40 games his first rookie season. He's clearly good enough for the NHL, but just start with 30, work your way up to 45, 60, and by year 4, he's a full-time NHLer. But putting him, throwing him into the mouth of the wolf, it's not really gonna. It can do more harm than good, and his injuries can get more and more frequent and more severe. So that's the main concern with Carlson, right?
I mean, Ducks fans remember this injury very well because this was when Mackenzie Weegar, he accidentally fell on Leo Carlson's leg, and the fear at the time was we thought he tore his MCL or tore one of his knee ligaments.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was a sprain, so he's only out 4 to 6 weeks. He should be back probably after the All-Star break. Luckily,
yeah.
And he was on pace to play about 2/3 of his games, which is around 50 to 55 games, which I think would have been perfect for him this season.
Yeah.
And I think what the Ducks need to do is kind of bring him back slowly because he is still developing. He is still young, so they got to be careful about that.
Absolutely,
yeah. Going back to Gauthier before we head to the first intermission, talk about just his playing style in general, especially coming off of World Juniors.
I can go for 5 minutes on this. You want me to get started right now? We can.
Are you saying should we take a break first in that case?
Perhaps. I think that might be the better idea. Just because I don't want to go 14 minutes into one segment. It'll be a struggle for you.
All right, so we'll do this then. We'll head to the first intermission now, and we'll talk more about Cutter Gauthier, his play at World Juniors, including that game-winning goal against Finland, baby, because I love that. Yeah, we'll get to that on the other side. Now a brief word from FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, and the NFL regular season is done. But there is still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet in time for the NFL playoffs. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is super easy to use because you can bet using live same game parlays, finds bets in the new Explore tab, and make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, including who's going to win those wildcard matchups Saturday and Sunday and Monday, by the way. Yeah, we have Monday playoff football and so much more. Can you believe we have Monday night playoff football, Hadi? I can't. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a touchdown. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL and the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Please, folks, gamble responsibly. Okay, let's talk for 5 minutes, as you said, about the master playmaker and the gold medal winning Cutter Gauthier from, say it with me all, USA.
Oh yeah,
had to do it.
He is amazing. He's fun. I still see a top 6 forward, and not everyone's on the same page in the scouting world regarding that. There are some tendencies that can turn some scouts off, and I definitely see it. You saw it especially in the first half of those World Juniors. Cutter Gauthier is a very trigger happy forward. He loves to shoot the puck.
Thank God.
Absolutely. The only issue is it can come to the detriment of some better plays. There was a specific play that I actually screenshotted and put on Twitter where he took a short side shot on the power play on a goalie who was cheating on the short side. So he's already looking that way with the shoulder covering the short side. That's where he chose to shoot. But not only that, there were 2 open players in the slot, ready for a tip in or a rebound or that kind of thing. So it can work to his disadvantage, but overall what I really like about Cutter Gauthier is he's such a versatile offensive weapon. He's not just a shooter. He's not just a goal scorer. He has a playmaking touch that when he chooses to execute on those passes, when he sees them, identifies them, and decides to go for it, fantastic playmaker. And that offensive versatility is not just in terms of his playing style, but also the positions he can play. He can play both wings and center, which is going to be really, really helpful for the Ducks because you guys have a logjam at center in terms of prospects. I mean, Leo Carlson, Trevor Zegras, Mason McTavish, and Cutter Gauthier, of course. All 4 of those guys can play center, but all 4 of them have also played wing and done it very, very well. So that offers you a lot of versatility in terms of where you can play guys. You can play them on the strong side. If a player's better at taking face off from the left circle versus the right, you can have a pair of quote-unquote centers on each line who can then take face-offs intermittently or that kind of thing. So not only that kind of versatility is really helpful for what Anaheim is looking to build, but also the stylistic versatility where if he's playing with Trevor Zegras, he can occupy that goal scoring role and be a very, very, very good one.
Yep, and I want to point out, because you mentioned that he's more trigger happy, Trevor Zegras at times is not trigger happy enough. I've seen at least 5, maybe more examples this season where he definitely could have been shoot first, or he has a wide open shot and does not take it. It was more maddening last season, and one in particular that still drives me nuts, a game against the Pittsburgh Penguins last season where Trevor Zegras had a wide open net in overtime, or actually it wasn't wide open, but it was a breakaway, did not take the shots and opted to pass it behind him. The Ducks wound up losing the game in overtime, if you recall that last season, all of, I think, 11 months ago now. and now you bring in someone stylistically like Cutter Gauthier, who I think could be the yin to the yang for Zegras, because Zegras stylistically is more pass first, but Zegras likes to create on the rush, but also Zegras likes to create behind the net. That's his bread and butter, is the Wayne Zegras area. And from what I've seen from Cutter Gauthier, he's more aligned on the wings, and he plays more in that kind of off slot area.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on the power play. That's mainly where you're going to see him is manning the half wall. Gauthier has been playing center at Boston College and played center at the World Juniors, but I've always seen him as a better fit on the wings, mainly because of his style. You mentioned him being kind of the yin to the yin to the yang of Trevor Zegras. I also see him as a fantastic fit for Mason McTavish because, like I said, stylistic versatility. If he plays beside Zegras, he can shoot the puck and do it really well and be that goal scorer on that line. But if he's playing with a Mason McTavish, who's a really, really good goal scorer, he can make plays. He can pass the puck. He can distribute, move into space, even play a power forward role. If he's placed with a Leo Carlson, those two can wreak havoc down low. Like, there are so many different styles that that Gauthier can play in various situations with the same level of quality and efficiency, which is really what makes him so good.
Next season will be really interesting because I don't think that Coach Greg Cronin is going to break up the fantastic line of Strome, McTavish, and Vatrano. That's been by far the best line for the Ducks this season.
Yeah.
So I don't see that being broken up yet. But next year during training camp, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if Cronin decides to pair up McTavish with Gauthier. I think, to your point, if you have those two on a line together, or at least on the power play, that could be very potent.
100%. And Gauthier, like I said, you can place him anywhere. He can even play on the penalty kill. He's decent enough defensively, not overwhelmingly good, but he can hold his own. So there's so many different things that he can do, and Ducks fans should absolutely be excited about this prospect. Like I said, I see him as a top 6 winger long term, and definitely more of a complementary piece than a central piece on any line. He's not going to be driving play as efficiently in transition. He's not going to be holding the puck for long. He's mainly going to be the type of guy you play off of. If you have a Travis Zegras or a Leo Carlson in your lineup, those two I think are great
McTavish.
Absolutely. You guys are spoiled for choice here, which is
or
fantastic.
a Troy Terry. Troy Terry.
People
forget about Troy Terry. Sorry, 2-time All-Star Troy Terry. Don't sleep on him, folks.
Yeah, and I think what would be really interesting long term would be to see a line of Gauthier, Zegras, and Terry, because Terry's your sharpshooter, is the type of guy who can fire from anywhere, put it in the back of the net, find a postage stamp size hole in the top corner and shoot it. You've got Charles Zegras, who's fantastic down low, who's really good at playmaking and can do that ridiculous Michigan. I mean, I often joke that he's more dangerous with a shot from behind the net than
5 of them.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And then you have Cutter Gauthier, who's your power forward element on that line. If you give him that role, he'll play it perfectly. He's got the frame, he's got the physicality, he's got the mindset for it. He's constantly overwhelming defensemen along the side of the net, or along the boards rather. He's constantly pushing down low, getting around opponents, muscling them off and driving the net. That's the type of style that you get from Gauthier. It's meat and potatoes, but it works extremely well with the right setting. And I think that the Ducks have all the pieces in order to make the right setting for Gauthier. And if you do, he's, like I said, he's a complementary piece. Don't expect him to be the game breaker, but you place him with the right guys, you can make one of the best lines in the NHL.
Which I think it's why I don't have McTavish and Gauthier on the same line together, because they're both kind of the same kind of players. So I wouldn't put them in the same line. But I like the idea of putting him with a Terry and with a Zegras, because Terry down the wing, he drives play a little bit more. He attracts defenders, or he's had a tendency to attract 2 defenders on him at all times.
Yeah.
Zegras, who you cannot leave alone behind the net, and the creativity of Zegras can really help a player like Cutter Gauthier, possibly on the left side. He said he could play any wing.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a very strangely potent line.
Absolutely.
Which now begs the question. We talked about Zegras, we talked about Terry, then we talked about McTavish. I mean, I talked about 6 forwards, and in my mind, I just realized that I left Leo Carlson out, who I would also want to see on the top 6.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's that big logjam.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great fit with Mason McTavish. If you can have them alternating faceoffs on a second line, or even make that your top line with a Frank Vatrano short term, I think those types of things work really, really well. But yeah, overall, I think that Gauthier will find a spot, because he always does. Like I said, you can place him in any situation, he'll make it work. And even if he's placed with Carlson and McTavish, that could be your power forward line. 3 guys who can work well down low, or who can play physically, who can handle their own, who can play defensively, and score some goals. Like there are so many combinations now that Gauthier's in this mix. And I think it won't be long before he signs a contract with the Ducks, because he's paid his dues in the NCAA. He's the best player on Boston College on most nights. Even if, again, he's still a complimentary piece on his line, he's the best complimentary piece you could possibly have at Boston College. So I don't think he has much to learn at that level. Maybe half a year in the AHL, work him up. Why not?
We'll see about that. I mean, I have my own concerns about him being in the AHL as a black ace, because the goals are terrible.
Makes sense.
That's another topic for another day. Before we head to the second intermission, just briefly talk about his time in Boston College so far.
Yeah, it was a great run. Now he's even more well surrounded. He's got Gabe Perreault, Will Smith, and Ryan Leonard to play with. He's got Jacob Fowler in net. It's going to be a really, really good season for him over in Boston College as they finish up here. I would not be surprised to see those guys push for an NCAA championship. I mean, they've got the skill for it, and Boston College is looking like a wagon this year. So expect them to maybe add some silverware and then hit the ground running in the pros.
Ooh, we'll see about that. All right, we're going to head to the second intermission, and we'll talk a little bit more about Cutter Gauthier and also why Jamie Drysdale. Yes, I know on the rundown it's reversed, but we'll get to that on the other side. Now, a brief word from the Gametime app, probably my favorite app that I've used, and I don't know I have that one, but the Gametime app, where you can get $20 off your first purchase from Gametime. And Hadi, I've used the app several times. I don't know if you've used it yet, but
so have I, yeah.
Yeah, you can get last minute tickets at low prices guaranteed. They even have flash deals. The Ducks' next game, home game, is going to be a long way away, but you can get tickets to see the New York Rangers, by the way. Also a wagon for about $30-$40. That seems cheap, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't used the Gametime app yet, what are you all waiting for? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. It should be locked on. Don't know why I don't have that. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, joined once again by Hadi Kalakeche from Locked On NHL Prospects. It's my job to pronounce names correctly.
There we go. You got it right. That's great.
Still my favorite, off topic, my favorite name to announce, just for the difficulty and trying to get it right. Shakir Makhmoudoulin.
Oh yeah, it's a mouthful. Too many syllables in that last name. There's just, yeah, it's a rough time.
How did you pronounce his name the first time you saw it?
It's Makhmoudoulin. I have the luck of being Arab, and he's from a region that is Muslim in origin. So I'm used to those sounds. It's a type of thing I've heard before. So yeah.
How do you say that one more time?
Makhmoudoulin.
Makhmoudoulin.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Barracuda are coming to town pretty soon.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure I get that right when the Barracuda come to town in Coachella Valley.
Absolutely.
I'm lucky that I haven't had to say his name yet on the PA so far.
Yeah.
Might not happen this time. Muhammad. Oh God. Okay.
It's a tough one. Makhmoudoulin.
Makhmoudoulin.
Exactly.
I'm going to pin that. When Makhmoudoulin comes to town in Palm Desert,
yep,
or next year for the All-Star game, assuming he's not a San Jose Shark, but we could talk about that afterwards. Yeah. Final kind of like little query on Cutter Gauthier. You said this has been in the works. He didn't want to play in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this was in the works on Philly's side, but the Anaheim side, this kind of came as a surprise.
Yeah.
Because the Ducks traded away Jamie Drysdale, number 6 overall pick in 2020. He has been injured the last couple of seasons. So I'll ask you this first. Why Jamie Drysdale?
There's a logjam. You guys have too many good defenseman prospects. I mean, the list is absurd. First of all, Pavel Mintyukov, ridiculous. Already one of the best rookies in the NHL. Olen Zellweger, not really used to the best extent in San Diego, Diego, as we were talking before, but overall fantastic skill set and should not be in the AHL for long. He's going to be an NHLer and a very, very good one. And on top of that, the prospects you guys have added in recent years. I mean, Noah Warren is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Rodwin Dionicho, I loved him last year, and I really thought an NHL team would pick him. He was passed over, drafted in the 5th round as an overager in the 2023 draft. Amazing pick.
That could be a steal.
This kid is a difference maker. He is really, really good. So in terms of choices, you guys are spoiled. So I don't think, it was just a matter of time before someone left. And in terms of what the Ducks could afford to lose, and in terms of what the Flyers were likely to ask for, Jamie Drysdale was a good middle ground. They could have traded Mintyukov, they could have traded Zellweger, maybe could have dropped down the price of return as well. Instead of giving a second round pick, might have been just a 1-for-1 trade.
Yeah.
But I think the smart thing to do here was to get rid of Jamie Drysdale, mainly just because the injury history is concerning. The performances in the NHL when he has been healthy have been very, very inconsistent. The numbers analytically aren't all there. And I know for a fact that the Anaheim Ducks scouting and development staff really hone in on analytics and their impact on the NHL. So I think it was in the cards for Drysdale, and I think a fresh start in Philly could really benefit him. And he fits really well on the right side. And on the right side, I mean, Noah Warren's in that conversation, but your two big guns, Zellweger and Mintyukov, are left-handed, right? So I think it's a good fit.
I think on the right side also, I think the reason why Jamie Drysdale for Philadelphia is because on the other side, Philadelphia is struggling on that right side because their second pairing defenseman is Sean Walker. Sean Walker is a fine player, don't get me wrong. I think Sean Walker has probably seen better days, and I hate saying that because I love the guy.
Yeah.
But I think he could probably fit into that first or second line on defense right away, where the right side is super thin in Philadelphia right now.
Yeah.
And adding to that, their power play could be a little bit better. I've even seen Cam York. Cam York dropped a couple of pucks on the blue line against that Pens game.
Yep.
They need someone that can quarterback the power play effectively, and I think Jamie Drysdale does fit that bill. Now, not to say that Drysdale isn't good quarterback in the power play, because I think Minty has been better this season.
Yeah,
Minty
he's absurd.
Is insanely good, and it's a broken record, but all y'all that texted me about Minty earlier this season, you know who you are. You were wrong.
Absolutely. I remember being absolutely stumped when Denton Mateychuk was picked before Pavel Mintyukov, because I kept joking time and time again, but like with a hint of seriousness, Pavel Mintyukov is just Denton Mateychuk, but tall. Like that's
bigger.
That's all. Like they're the same player. I mean, I've seen, I can't count to the amount of times I saw Pavel Mintyukov chase his own dump-ins in the OHL. Like he'll dump a puck in and he'll just go and chase it and forecheck. And it's just he's that type of player. Hints of crazy, but the good kind. And he's learned
not at first.
Yeah. No, exactly. It took some time, and I feel like he's done a really good job of reining it in. And now he's become a seriously impactful player on a night by night basis. He's been, just the way that he prevents opponents from breaking the puck out just by his positioning and his decision of pinches, which can seem a bit wild at first, but once you hone in on what he's trying to do, it becomes increasingly clear that he knows what he's doing.
I said exactly those words last month, by the way.
Exactly.
Where he's taking too many risks. He's still pinching where he shouldn't.
Yeah.
And he still plays a little bit, not erratically, unexpectedly at times, I think is the word to use here.
Chaotic.
Chaotic. But a better chaotic recently.
Yeah. 100%. And it's a lot more decisive.
And even having good plays where he's preventing cross ice passes, by the way. I've seen that happen more than a handful of times over the past month or two, where he's guarding that Royal Road so much better now than he was before.
100%. Absolutely. And we haven't even gotten into the fact that Tristan Luneau is looking really good as well. I mean, that's another player who on the right side has made it really, really, I mean, it's sad to say, but he's made Drysdale expendable. These are players that are going to be playing NHL minutes, are going to be doing it really well. And I mean, when you have an embarrassment of riches like the Ducks have, especially on defense, you can afford to lose a guy like Drysdale to add a bona fide long-term top six forward in Cutter Gauthier. It just made sense for both sides here.
And something that I didn't really talk about, but I was going to talk about it later this week on the halfway point for the Ducks. They're sellers. In a sense, they are sellers right now because they're third worst in the league.
Yeah.
I know the Ducks were expected to take a leap in the standings this season. It has not happened. Where they're right there, unfortunately, with the Sharks, with the worst record in the league. So the Ducks need to make some moves.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I feel like this was a necessary move to make if they're going to move forward, because this season at this point, it's a loss.
Yeah.
Now you have to look for the next year and the following year to see where they go.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, obviously they're going to have to sell some pieces. I don't think they're going to be selling the key elements of their team. It's going to be, if anyone's leaving, maybe Frank Vatrano, maybe some of those middle six guys who.
Maybe not Frank.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys love Frank, but the return you can get from him right now, it could benefit you long term, and especially if you have your top six figured out with a bunch of prospects like the Ducks do. I think it would be realistic to see them pull the trigger on that. Kerry Turance, I'm a huge fan of him. Yegor Sidorov, big fan of him as well. Colson Petra is going to be climbing the ranks. I mean, they've got some decent pieces that they just picked up, and especially if you're going to be having a top 3, top 4 pick in this year's draft, more likely than not, you're going to be coming out of that with either a top 6 forward or a bona fide top pair or top 3 defenseman. Because this year's draft is heavy on defense as well. So it would make sense, but I know how much Ducks fans love Vatrano. So maybe we back off that conversation.
Yeah, let's back off the Vatrano because there's a couple other players who I think actually will get traded.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
That's going to be another podcast for another day because I have a legit list of 4 guys that are probably going to get dealt at the deadline.
Okay. Absolutely.
But Vatrano's not on that list. I will give one name on that list that I think is for sure going to get dealt. Adam Henrique.
Oh, I would not be surprised at all.
Did you notice that this whole time we did not mention Adam Henrique, who is top 6 right now?
Yeah, it's because that's a ship that's sinking, and you have to get.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Absolutely.
In my head, I already think he's going to get dealt.
Oh yeah, that would make sense for sure.
Well, we're good on time right now, but any final thoughts on this kind of stunning, the big first trade before the deadline?
Yeah, I mean, no one expected this, and I think everyone is having a lot of fun with it online. And I'm sure Cutter Gauthier is happy. And yeah, I mean, I wish nothing but the best to Jamie Drysdale. Is going to be a great player in Philly, and especially if he can find his footing and get on top of his health and stay healthy for his team. Both teams are going to be coming out of this major winners. It's one of those rare win-win trades.
Yep. And to have a little bit of fun here, he gets to reunite with one of his favorite guys, Nick Delorier.
Absolutely.
Sorry, hat trick maestro Nick Delorier.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Offensive juggernaut Nick Delorier.
That's still one of the stupidest games I've ever been to, ever.
Yeah,
was sitting up with. Nick Delorier still has the fastest hat trick in Ducks history.
That's ridiculous.
That's so dumb.
That's ridiculous.
Hockey is literally the stupidest but the best sport ever.
It is. It really is.
All right, we gotta get out of here. But where can the fine folks? We're losing it here. Where can the fine folks find you, your podcast, and where can they find all your work online?
Yeah, so the one-stop shop is Hadi K_scouting on Twitter. It's right below my face if you're watching on YouTube. And yeah, it's where I post everything. Podcast episodes, articles, rankings, everything prospects related I tweet about and put out on Twitter. If not, I've got a personal YouTube channel, Hadi Kalakeche, NHL Draft Scouting. Just look that up if you're watching on YouTube. You'll find it pretty quickly. And you can find the podcast Locked On NHL Prospects wherever you find this and wherever you're watching this. So keep a lookout for that.
And you can find all of my stuff. First off, Locked On Anaheim Ducks. Just look for that on your little search engine. That's available on all platforms, free and available on all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, not Smoke Signal, but also on ad-free on Amazon, also on YouTube. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, also SiriusXM. You could follow me on Twitter, the site formerly known as Twitter, comme ça, at StimpyJD. And the show's not Twitter is at LO_Ducks. And you can drop me an email at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. And also a public address for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, where I say Firebirds goal. And also, I hadn't mentioned this because this news just came out. But speaking of prospects and speaking of guys in the AHL, I'll announce this here that Coachella Valley will be hosting the AHL All-Star Game next February. So I hope that you will consider coming out to Palm Desert to get away from the snow and the cold and check out all the prospects, because there's always prospects at these All-Star games for the AHL.
Absolutely.
It'll be fun. You could play your golf game. You don't play golf, do you?
I don't play golf. No,
Yeah.
no, I don't.
Get your suntan on. How's that?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, I'm in Montreal. You can imagine how we're living here. So, yeah.
Everyone's gonna want to come here. Everyone
Absolutely.
telling you. Once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. For Hadi Kalakeche and myself, got it right. This is Locked On Anaheim Ducks. Wishing you a very good evening. Reminder to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and ducks and baby ducks fly together. That was good.
Absolutely, that was amazing. Oh, I